Hey everybody, Michael Bullock back here with Michael Bullock Watercolors. Just want to thank you guys for joining me again. Today we're going to start on the second half of my painting Farmstead Road with step-by-step instructions so you can follow along with me. Um, if you watched my previous video, uh, you know that I uploaded a link to download the photo and the sketch that I used um, for this. I'll also put those links in the show notes here. And if you haven't watched that one, you might want to go back and watch it. It's a bit long, it's a couple hours, and this one will be probably just as long. But it's a great in-depth look at how how I paint, how um, the techniques that I use and the color choices I make, and yeah, how I go about um, uh, working on a painting. Um, so that one starts with the sketch, the choice of paper. Again, I'm using um, Arches 140 weight um, watercolor paper. It's 100% cotton rag. Um, I recommend using a good quality paper. You don't have to use Arches, but something comparable to that. Fabriano is a good brand. Um, there's several out there. Just don't stay away from the really cheap ones, especially the ones that are pulp based. Um, uh, it's just not worth it to paint. Even if you're practicing, it's just not worth it to paint on those papers. They're fine for drawing. They're fine for you know quick studies maybe, but if you're gonna do an actual painting and really want to get in and really want to explore what's possible with watercolor, you're gonna just have to use a good piece of paper. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this. I want to remind everybody that I paint in an open studio, so people come in and out all the time. So you may hear background noise and whatnot. There's also a small coffee shop located in this building, which is just right around the corner from me. And uh, So there will be background noise from time to time, but hopefully that's not too distracting. And it's all part of the experience. So I enjoy working here in this open studio. I like the fact that people can come in and watch and talk to me and stuff like that. So hopefully you'll sort of let that slide. So without any further ado, let's get started. Alrighty, well, as you recall, we left off last time having painted these dark shadows. I'm going to replay a little bit of the footage uh, that that I showed you the last time. Um, just do a little bit of a zoom in here, and I'm going to add just a wee bit more. Um, Once I get zoomed in here, I'm going to add a little bit more. Just kind of looking at these shadows over here on the right hand side of the painting, um, just kind of cleaning them up a little bit, adding a little bit to them, and then I'm going to come in here and add just a little bit underneath this eave. What it's, even though technically you might not really see a cast shadow from that eave uh, because it's on the dark side, and it's on the shadow side of a building. That's going to just help push that eave back a little bit and show that there's a bit of distance between where an overlap where that um, where that eave passes, goes past the edge of the barn. And then, if you recall, we added this little cast shadow uh, from the eave on the front side. So just thinking about where uh, where would these shadows be cast? And even if it's technically maybe, I don't know, maybe not perfectly correct, it's going to work for and help add depth and uh, dimension to your paintings. So now that we're done with that, I'm going to just start. I'm going to add a little bit more kind of uh, some streaks and whatnot here on the roof line of the. I'm doing this, kind of rusted metal roof. It's different from the one that's in the photo. At least the upper portion. I think in the photo those are like shingles or something. But it is rusted metal on this sort of uh, lower section here that I'm painting now. And I was using a little peacock blue, and now I have a little bit of indigo, and I'm just going back and adding a few little dark details just to kind of add a little bit to that. Um, I did notice that I overlapped a little bit here. So I'm just going to clean this up and lift it and make it a little lighter. Now, you could just decide, oh, well, I'm going to reshape maybe it's bent metal or whatever, but if you can't get it to lift. But that lifted pretty easily, so I'm going to be happy with that sort of shape that I've got there. It was a little bit more than I wanted it to be. So let's see. Let's come up here. I'm just going to add, just basically these kind of are mimicking the metal panels that you might see, and I'm just hinting at them. I don't want to really, I don't want to go in and paint every single panel and every single screw or anything like that. I'm just basically kind of giving you the impression of a rusty roof. Just putting some and giving you that texture. So that's really what this is about. It's not about painting the individual things. Again, that's indigo that I'm using there, and I'm using my number eight brush. So yeah, I'm just going to continue on. Just now, I'm softening that a little bit because it was a little too much. You don't want that to be extremely dark. Now I'm using a little of that. I'm using a little burnt sienna. Earlier I had been using quinacridone burnt orange, but that's a little burnt sienna right there. And now I've got a little alizarin crimson that I'm just dropping in there, just for a little variety in that the look of this, of the rust metal. Um, so I will say this: if you're ever playing around with painting rusted metal, if you use, oops, got distracted by talking about what I was doing or what you could do. That's also alizarin crimson, or no, that's opera. I'm sorry, I don't know. That's a little opera right there. Luckily, it's pretty easy to pick up when it's wet. Um, but if you ever want to, like paint rusted metal, a good mix is Payne's Gray and burnt sienna. Boy, the two of those, if you put down some Payne's Gray and then put down some burnt sienna next to it, and then let the two kind of touch each other and run into each other, that's a magnificent rusted metal. So yeah, give that a try sometime, and maybe I'll do a demo on doing that. For here, we're not going for a lot of detail. I just kind of want a little bit of the impression of rusted metal. Here we're adding a little bit of the peacock blue down in there. I'm just kind of looking around anywhere I think maybe I need another little stroke or a little line to kind of add some texture. I'm kind of doing a combination of dry brushing, and if I feel like it's too dark, I can come back in, lift a little bit back out with just a clean brush, like I just did there. So just adding some water here. Here's some, excuse me, some opera again. Just adding a little bit of that, and then just a clean brush with just water, just to soften some of those edges. Just have fun with it. Give it a try. I'm kind of following the angle. I'm trying to run parallel to the angle of the roof edges, and so there's a little burnt sienna again, just to add a little more rust. And I know it looks dark, but it's very watery, and so it's going to dry a lot lighter than it currently is. Plus, if you feel like it's too dark, you can always go back in while it's still wet and just lift a little bit with a thirsty brush. Just clean your brush out completely, and then use it to kind of wipe up some of the excess. Here, I'm just going to add water. You can see I can lighten that a whole ton. It's there, but it's not as much. So I'm going to come back out here. I'm still not super happy with the shape of these trees. I want to kind of soften the edge here, close to the edge of the paper. You don't want too sharp edges right off the right close to the edge of your painting. So I just want to soften those, and then I want to kind of sculpt this thing. It was just looking a little weird, so I didn't really care for the shape. So I'm just going to add a little bit more dark around this edge and sort of define that a little bit more. Kind of soften some of this closer to the edge of the paper, and basically what I did is I went in there with a little hooker's green mixed with royal blue to add that dark, and then now I'm just then I use some water to kind of soften it. Now I've got a little of the indigo. So I'm just making that a little bit darker behind the barn, just going to help push that barn even more forward, and push those trees back further. And I know this seems really like those trees seem really light next to the edge, but I have a thing that I'll do at the end, and I'll kind of show you where we'll knock those back a little bit more even. So, I mean, you'll still keep that kind of light top kind of thing, but light where the light's hitting the trees, but it won't be as dark as, or I mean, it won't be as light as it is right now, because right now it's kind of competing against the barn. So this is again hooker's green that I'm using here, mixed with just a tiny bit of royal blue just to make it a little darker. So just adding a little texture to those trees. So I'll come down here a little bit, maybe soften some of this. And I'm just adding, texture here and there. I'm not trying to paint every leaf or anything, but I am adding little tick marks, little dots. Same with over here. I'm going to come over here and kind of change this up a little bit. Basically, I'm just softening that edge. Now I'm just going to come in and add a few more. That's the indigo that I'm using right there, just to kind of add a few more little tick marks. And here I can kind of even lift, even though I have color in my brush, I can kind of lift that. We'll just add a little bit more dark down in here as well, just to kind of break this up and really, or I mean, not break it up, but just to kind of push that barn forward. I'm still kind of working on that, trying to get that, and sculpting the I'm using those darks behind it, that negative space behind the barn,
even though it's made up of something, which is a tree. Uh, I'm I'm using that negative space back there to kind of um, show what the barn, the shape of the barn. So it's negative painting. I'm painting the dark behind the light in order to make the light object pop forward more. I'm just going to soften this. This white is a little stark right here. So basically all I'm doing is just adding water and letting that paint that's on the paper, even though it's 100% dry, I can come in and soften it a little bit, and it just knocks those lights back so they're not quite as bright as they were. And then I'm going to come over here and add a little bit more dark. I want this tree to have a little more volume. Right now it's a little flat. So I'm just going to add a few more darks in here. This is Hooker's Green mixed with Royal Blue that I'm using right now. And I'm just kind of thinking about where I think darks would be, where I think shadows would be cast from the light source. In this case, the sun. Just thinking about those shapes, and in order to do this, it's really helpful to spend a lot of time kind of just looking at trees, looking at clouds, those kinds of things. I mean, I do that all the time. I just kind of look at shapes um, and think, oh, okay, well, how could I replicate that? And it's not going to look exactly the same, but as the photo, but well, of course, in this case, it's not at all because I'm adding foliage to all these leaves. So what I'm doing here is I've grabbed a yellow spray bottle, and what this is it's those Holbein spray bottles, which um, I just want to show you how to do this. Tom Lynch, he actually sells some that work. So if you look him up and look up spray bottles, he actually sells some. They're a little different than this, but this is basically that spatter brush or spatter spray bottle, and you have to really shake it up good. Otherwise, the tip or the spray nozzle will clog. And the difference between this and a fine mist sprayer is that and I think I talked about this before, but you don't have to push the you don't have to depress the button very well or very hard, and it just spits out a little bit of water, and in this case, water mixed with yellow paint. So this is permanent yellow lemon that I have in this bottle. And maybe I'll do a little demo on how to use these, and I'll show you Tom Lynch. There's one other artist who sells these spray bottles as well. I mean, you can still get these Holbein ones, but they don't have the correct spray bottle or nozzle anymore. So it's hard for me to recommend them if they're not going to work correctly. But I'm just adding a little bit more of that bright yellow to the tops of these trees. I want some of that uh, that lightness for the trees. So that was lemon yellow that I was using there, and basically you can kind of see, uh, I've got these little blobs of yellow. We're going to add just a little bit more. That one kind of made a. Sometimes these nozzles, they get a little clogged. I made that one thing a little too big, but I'll come back. Yeah, lift it just with my sponge, or you could use a thirsty brush. The sponge was just close. So I have that lemon yellow that I put down, and now I'm going to grab another spray bottle that's filled with permanent yellow deep, which is that slightly darker yellow. Um, and basically you can't see it, but I'm shake. Yeah, here we go. I was shaking it off camera, but um, I'm just going to use a little of that, and you can see I'm not even really pressing that very hard, and I'm just putting in a few dots of that slightly darker orangey yellow. So I started off with the permanent yellow lemon, and now I'm using the permanent yellow deep, and both of these are Holbein colors. If you're not using those, you could use again cadmium yellow lemon and cadmium orange or cadmium, what is it, medium orange, something like that. Anyway, here you can kind of see those spray bottles, and you can kind of see one thing real quick to talk about. You can see here. I wanted to show you if you're using the spray bottle technique. You definitely want to clean your. This is something I didn't know. I learned this technique from Tom Lynch. I want to give credit where credit's due. But the first time he talked about it, he did not talk about cleaning the first time I took a class from him. He did not talk about cleaning these nozzles out, and they will get clogged. So you can see some actually floating in my water bucket there. But the second time I took a workshop from him, he did mention that. Anyway, I just kind of wanted to show you that. Basically, I just take the top off the little bottle and stick it down in my water bucket and spray cleanish water through it. That water at the top it doesn't look clean, but it's cleaner than because all the sediment from brush, from paint and whatnot, falls down to the bottom. That's another little tidbit I like to talk about, is using a deep water bucket that's filled up so that you can wash your brush at the top, and then the paint falls down to the bottom. Here I'm using the same kind of water bottle, but I'm just spritzing plain water. So I'm just kind of barely spritzing a little water, and that'll help the colors kind of run together. I can put clear water droplets on the paper, and then I can use my brush to kind of move some of that. Here I'm going to grab my I dipped it in the water and grabbed some, and then squeezed it out so that I could make a thirsty brush. And now I'm just picking up a little of that excess, and I'm using my brush to kind of spread that color around. Here I'm just going to pick up a little bit, basically wiping my brush off each time, just so it's thirsty, so that it'll pick up that excess water. Yeah, and then you can even come back in with the brush and add a few little dots of here I'm using the permanent yellow deep, and I'm just adding, and they're it's hard to see on screen here, but there are little water droplets that I'm dropping this paint into, so it's not going to look as dark, which is kind of cool, because once we put a sky in here, we're that's really going to pop forward. So it's going to help that whole area. It's going to help push the trees forward. It's going to help push the barn forward. So yeah, just continuing, picking up a little of that. Sorry, my chair keeps squeaking. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I gotta oil this chair. So yeah, here I'm adding a little opera to that. Not a lot of that will show, but it'll just have this little hint of pink in there. And then I'm going to hit it with the hairdryer. We'll just dry that, and then I'm going to spread. Even though I'm drying it, I'm going to spread that out a little bit, kind of blend it a little bit. Yeah. So now we get to work on this fence post. So I just wanted to start off with clean paper. I mean, this fence post is mostly going to be in the dark, but I didn't want a lot of other, color on it. So I just, in that last lesson or last half of the lesson, we taped that off, if you remember. So let me just zoom in here. There we go. And actually, now that I think about it, I kind of want to. I'm gonna kind of. Let's see if I can get this to work right. I've got it zoomed in, but let me kind of pan over here, and I'll show you my palette again. Let's see. Yeah. So I've got a little quinacridone gold and a little lemon yellow, and I'm going to just add a little of that lemon yellow to my quinacridone gold to lighten it up ever so slightly. And then let me pan back over here. The last time I did this, I forgot, and I was painting those mountains, if you recall. So I'm just going to come in with a little of that quinacridone gold lemon yellow that I mixed, and I'm just adding, a little bit of that in here. This is the light side. This is the side of the post that's going to be catching the light from the sun. Now you can tell, I've got, a good chunk of that post that's going to be in shadow, but I want to add these kind of lights, this sort of hint of color below. And then as I get down here, so that was opera, and now I've got some peacock blue that I'm adding in to this. So just kind of getting this first layer on this post, and then I got a little green here. I'm going to sit here. I don't know why I even tried to lift that. That's going to all be in dark, so I shouldn't even really. I don't know why. It's like a thing that I got to do. But that's going to be in dark here fairly soon, and I won't even have needed to do that. But here I go trying to lift it. And actually, that green kind of works well with the that I got on there works well. So here I'm just kind of using water to kind of move stuff around. And I'm going to dry it real quick, just because uh, um, I want to speed up the process a little bit. Um, it's not going to be totally 100% dry when I'm done here, but it'll be dry enough that I can kind of. It won't be wet on wet. So let me kind of scan back over here. And I'm going to grab this. This is a little indigo right there, and I'm just picking up some of this dark violet that I mixed, which is um, um, quinacridone violet and royal blue mixed. And then I'm adding to it a little burnt sienna. It's just going to make kind of a dark neutral, kind of gray. And if you don't have Payne's Gray, that's a great way to make Payne's Gray is to do like a blue, like royal blue, hooker's green, and quinacridone violet, and then add just a little bit of burnt sienna to it. And that makes a beautiful, very similar to Payne's Gray, a very beautiful gray. And here I'm just going to go in and start. You can see, it's not even totally dry. I wanted it just dry enough to where I could get some color to kind of stay, but also where it would still bleed a little bit. And that just adds that cool volume. It adds that cool blend. And if I had tried to paint that, I would have struggled probably. So just coming back in with that. Had a hiccup there. Just coming back in with the that same mixture, the kind of neutral gray. It's leaning a little bit more towards the blue. Hit it with the hairdryer again, real quick. And then I'm just going to lift some of this back out with a thirsty brush. So basically, I clean my brush out. And I'm just lifting that back out. So there I added a little water. Now let me hit it with the hairdryer again. But it's already starting to look very post-like. Very, I still want to get it a little bit. I'm going to add some darks back behind it and whatnot to help push it forward. But it's starting to look like a post. And so this is kind of where I think the shadow will be. We'll see how this pans out, but I think the shadow will be kind of generally in this area. I'm just adding a few little ticks there and here and there for texture, but now I'll just come in. So that I should have told you the color. That was quinacridone violet, and now I've got the quinacridone violet royal blue mix to kind of make a purple, and now I'm using indigo here. With that, just adding a little bit. And now I've picked up some more quinacridone violet, and I'm just going to blend those two on the paper. You know, I'm not really trying to I'm not really mixing them. I'm just kind of putting the color down and then putting the other color next to it and then kind of getting them to blend themselves. So that's a great watercolor trick, is just letting those two kiss and touch, and then they 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 mix themselves, and they end up making a better mix than you'll ever get if you tried to mix them on your palette. Let me just pick up a little. I got that. This is still the indigo that I've been using right there. I'm just going to pick some of that back up with the kind of the butt, you know, where the bristles of my brush kind of go into the ferrule. Just picking a little of that up, just lightening that ever so slightly. And then I'm going to kind of clean up the edge here. Sorry, it's a little looked over and it's a little hard to see underneath my hand. I wish I had a clear hand, but I just, it's something I haven't been able to accomplish. Uh, so yeah, just adding more of that dark down in here. So as I said, just continuing this, now I'm adding a little that's actually a little burnt sienna that I just added in there, just to give it a little bit of an earth tone at the bottom, just to make it look a little more like wood. So just a little burnt sienna, and then as I went up, I ended up picking up some of that indigo that I was using that's still wet on the paper, and I'm just gonna kind of throw out a few little close-ups of some brush, some weeds that are growing up here next to this post, just to kind of help anchor it down in. And you can see I'm using a variety of whoops, there goes my brush. I'm using a variety of strokes, either, you know, kind of the side pushed of my brush pushed down, and then a lot of just the point of my brush. Excuse me. So yeah, just kind of coming back in here, using that paint that's already on the paper, and that's loaded into the brush, just adding more texture down here around the post, just going to help it pull down into the ground and sort of remain anchored. Let me hit this with a hairdryer real quick. Just kind of get that dry, and then I can kind of even come back in with another layer of dark. I really want this to kind of have a lot of contrast with the light side of the post, and that's just that indigo. I'm still kind of using that indigo. Here I'm going to grab a little excuse me, a little permanent yellow deep, just to add a little vibrancy to this side of the post, just a little orange to that. And then I can kind of get those two to bleed together a little bit. And now I'm just using a thirsty brush to kind of come back in and pick some of that back up where I feel like I maybe had a little too much water. So, and just again, that's just squeezing out the brush. Let me pick that up a little bit. We'll hit it with the hairdryer again. And I just, you know, went in with a wet brush and kind of softened that real quick, and then picked it up with my rag. So I just want to kind of get this a little darker right in here and really emphasize how dark this shadow is, how much of this is in shadow versus versus the bit that's going to be sticking up out into the light.
And again, I'm still just, using that indigo. I've got a little bit of quinacridone violet mixed in with it. And every so often, I've picked up I've put a little burnt sienna in it, but right now it's just the indigo. And now I want that light edge of the post to really pop against those trees. So I'm going to darken these trees, help push them back, help push pull the post forward, and push these trees back in space. So really dealing with um, that depth just by adding more dark around this post. Um, Even though they're both kind of dark, this is going to really help uh, differentiate between the two, that contrast that we're adding. So that was a little indigo that I was using, and now I've got quinacridone violet mixed with royal blue. And I apologize for coughing so much. Got a tickle in my throat. So just coming along. This is that quinacridone violet mixed with royal blue. Now I've cleaned out my brush so I can just soften some of this. So it's just water that I'm using. So I'm coming back along with the that wet paint with just water, and I'm sort of softening the edges, playing with which edges are hard, which edges are soft. And really helping build up that contrast. Even though some of this stuff looks pretty dark, it's really all very similar in value, and I want to really make some of this stuff pop compared to the things that are surrounding it. So here I've got a little Hooker's green. I'm just going to kind of change that up. I still want this to be, lighter up here, but I also want it to be darker than the fence post that's in front of it. So using a little Hooker's green, it's still a bright green. It'll merge down into those darker indigos. And then this I still feel like this needs to be darker in some spots. I'm not totally concerned with painting over the whole thing. I don't want it to be, I don't want it to be, like a solid dark. I want some variation. And then I'm just going to add a few more darks down in here, kind of darken up some of this kind of, longer grassy stuff. Sorry, my hand's not transparent. All right, let me pan over here and I'll kind of show you what I'm doing on my palette. Maybe we can get that where I want you to see. So I've got some alizarin crimson, or no, I mean quinacridone violet, sorry. And I've dropped a little royal blue into that just to get a little bit more violet color here, a darker violet. And that's basically how I'm working that mixing that quinacridone violet to get that darker purple. I put a little violet down, I go grab a little royal blue, and then I was kind of dabbing my brush. Oh crap! I gotta. Let me come back over here. I was rotating my brush as I was pulling it up to get a really nice point against that, and you can see. So sorry, I forgot to move the camera back, but I promise I'll get better at this. You can see that I started to paint a few of those kind of details into the facade, the front face of the barn here. And that's just to kind of hint at some of the different edges and things that are on on the front here, to kind of give it that, so it doesn't look like just a flat wash of color. I want to add a little bit of little bit of hints of texture and uh, you know, wooden slats and whatnot. So I want to kind of hint at that. I'm not going to paint every board in the barn, but I want to hint at some of that, make it really look like it's rugged and old and weathered. So, and I'm just using that quinacridone violet mixed with the royal blue. So I'm even going to overlap some of these up into the cast shadow. I don't want those strokes to necessarily stop where the shadow begins, or start and stop where that. I want to overlap those so you can tell that they're part of the whole thing. I have to apologize if you can hear that tapping in the background. There's a stained glass artist who works in the studio here. She's, a little bit of ways away, but you can still kind of hear her working away. But that's just part of the joy of working in an open studio. You get to, check out other people's work, see how they're doing stuff. Here you can see I'm just kind of thinking about how these shapes, the door frame, that kind of stuff. I'm adding a little bit of a shadow, so to the edge of that wood there, I'm going to deepen this shadow as well. Just along here, kind of thicken those boards up, that post up. Add a few more strokes here and there. Maybe one more somewhere up in here. Yeah, I'm gonna have something. Maybe there's a big crack in the boards right there, so you can kind of see that. Just didn't feel like that was quite dark enough, that edge. So, and here I think I'm gonna make the boards kind of go horizontal, just to give a little different, look to it. Obviously in the photo, if you look at the photo, the side of the barn is mostly horizontal, but I've changed it to mostly vertical. So the sides are in the original photo, but I really like this kind of vertical slat kind of look. It's kind of fun. So, and I'm going to continue with a little of that over here on the shadow side of the building. And again, I don't want things sort of starting and stopping with the edge of that shadow, that cast shadow, even though it's, kind of a fake cast shadow. I don't want, so I'm overlapping. I'm making sure that overlaps. So let me just kind of come in here. I'm just kind of going around looking at different spots where I think maybe it needs a little texture. I don't want to overdo it, but I do want to make sure that I continue to kind of think about where those lines are and stuff. So now I'm going to use a spray bottle again, and I don't want the spray to go everywhere, so I'm just going to place a towel where, to kind of cover up bits that I don't want to have little dots on there. So I'm just kind of putting these to kind of protect from overspray. I still may get some overspray, but I want the least amount possible. And while I'm doing this, I just want to remind you, hey, give me a like, a share, maybe a subscribe. That'll really help me out. Keep doing this stuff for everybody. And what I've done here is I have my spray bottle with a little alizarin crimson, and that really, this darker, color versus the when I was using the yellow spray bottle, you can really see the patterns that you can get from the spray bottles. And now what I've done is I did that alizarin crimson. Now I'm coming back in with a little clear, just plain water, and I'm spritzing a little bit there to make it run a little bit more. So this is just to add a little bit more texture to the roof. Here I'm going to come back in with some of that alizarin crimson again. Kind of make sure I keep that all covered up. There we go. So just, you can see the varied dot pattern. I have some little tiny dots. I have some bigger blobs. I have some medium-sized dots. So that's kind of some of the fun that you can do with that, those spray bottles. And this is just a little tiny hint of it. So I'm just going to come back in with a little clear water and spritz some of those areas just to get that to run a little bit more. And then I'm going to blow this dry real quick. You can see down there in the corner I got a little water down in there, but that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything to have a little, even if I have some of that alizarin crimson kind of run. But if it starts to bother, well, it did start to bother me. I'll just pick some of that up with a rag. So I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to grab a toothbrush. So I have an old toothbrush. Don't worry, it was never used to brush teeth. But I've loaded it up with some burnt sienna, and I'm just going to kind of flick some tiny little dots of burnt sienna on the roof. And it's a little hard to see. It's a little easier to see in person. Let me dip that in there and get a little bit more. There we go. Now you can start to see. I kind of get this spray pattern. And you just, flick it with your thumb and point it at whatever you want. That kind of dusting of whatever color you're using. In this case, I'm using burnt sienna because it's a nice color for rust, and it just adds all these little tiny specks, little rusty specks in the roof. So that's one other way of doing it. If you don't go to the trouble of, maybe you don't want to try the spray bottles, you can get a very similar technique. Mind you, they're mostly small. I'm just going to pick up some of that excess because it was a little much. It's fairly small, but you can do that with a toothbrush as well. And then I'm just going to spritz a little more water on there in a couple of spots. Now that that's soaked in a little bit, I'm just going to kind of blot it just a little bit. And I can even scrub it, and you can see where those dots were. It picked some up, especially in that area where the two angles meet, kind of towards in the middle of the roof there. You can see some spots where it really picked some of that paint back up. And we'll be doing that here again. I'll show you that some more here in a minute. Okay, so let me zoom back out and kind of come back over here to this section. I'm going to zoom in, kind of angle, focus on this section here, and I spritzed a little water on there. It was hard to see, but you can see I spritzed some, and now you can see where I lifted that water up here. Let me show you. I'm just spritzing a little water throughout these shadows because I want a little more dappled look. It has that a little bit, but I can add more in that just by using the spray bottle and the varied dot pattern that I get with it. It's really awesome. So once you let that sit for maybe 10 or 20 seconds, You can blot it. That's really important that you blot it to get the excess water up. So I kind of do that with a dry rag. You want to make sure you're using a dry rag, and then I take that rag and I scrub. You kind of just scrub the paper, and you can see where I've picked up uh, some some uh, little specks and stuff within the dark. Um, so that's a really fun technique, and you know, it kind of goes against that whole, oh well, once you do something you're stuck with it mantra that, you know, seems to be prevalent in watercolor. um, that's not entirely true. You can fix problems, you can change things. Is it as easy as, say, oil paints or acrylics? No, but you can really do some great things, especially if you get something too dark and maybe it looks a little overworked. This is a great, just lifting some out is a great way of getting texture back into a uh, and bringing back some light to a very dark area. So I'm just going to spritz a little up here in the trees just to change that up a little bit, give it a little more texture. It's looking a little flat still to me. So I just spritzed it in a few spots with the clear water, and now that it's, you know, maybe a few, you know, 5-10 seconds, whatever, I'll blot that. It softens the paint, and then I can go back in. You can see where it landed. What's fun is you never kind of, you know, it's always kind of a surprise. Yeah, here you can see. It's always kind of a surprise what it's going to look like, which is fun. You know, it's kind of unknown, but at the same time, you get used to what it's going to look like. You know, you can kind of tell. It's still surprising. So there I did. You know, I spritzed a little more. It's kind of hard to see because I'm so zoomed in. You can't really see that I'm spritzing with the water bottle, but I wanted you to be able to see where that was lifting. So come back over here. Kind of zoom out a little bit. Let me get that. Let me get this kind of arranged in here a little bit better. Okay, so now I'm just I've got water in my brush, and I'm just going to do a little thing. I kind of call it fake calligraphy. I'm just kind of scribbling little random shapes. Well, that's not as random, but just kind of scribbling some little random shapes in that dark. And then I'm going to let it set for a little bit here. And now we'll blot it. We'll pick up that water again, and then you can already see that it's lifted some of that up. And it just makes these kind of random textural shapes. I call it fake calligraphy because sometimes it can kind of look like you're making loops and swooshes like calligraphers do. And you just need a round brush with a good tip. Some people like to use a liner brush, which has a much longer set of bristles, but it works just as well with a really good fine tipped short brush as well. So I'm going to start lifting. I'm going to add a little detail in the barn here just to help tell the story of this barn a little bit more. This is I'm lifting out I'm basically sketching with water, and I'm just lifting out shapes that might look maybe like a tractor when I get done. So I'm just kind of drawing the front end of a tractor here. I'm going to add another beam that's maybe a little further in the background. I'm just going to blot that now, and you can see lifted it right out. So now I have this lighter stroke of something. Maybe I'll add something that kind of looks like a barrel. and again, this is just water in my brush. It's just clean water in my brush. It doesn't even have to be clean. It's just water, really. See, so that kind of, maybe that looks like the edge of a barrel. I don't know. I come back in here and maybe work on this tire a little bit better. Make this look a little more. Maybe there's a hub, a bigger hub here. There we go. That's starting to look like a tire and maybe the front end of a tractor a little bit better. So just, adding fun things. Oh, I kind of smeared a little paint there, so let me just kind of pick that up. The fact that there's a little there doesn't bother me, but it did look a little weird, so I just soften that and pick it back up. The trick is, if you do something like that, don't panic. Just go, oh, okay, I can fix that. So there we go, just a little bit better. Maybe I'll do a little lifting of some random shapes in here, some just little strokes inside these so maybe it looks like something's back in there. Who knows? Maybe there's a post and through these windows, these openings. So just kind of let it soften. And the longer, like if you don't let it soften that long, it won't pick it up as well. And that's kind of what I was going there. I didn't let it soften that long, but I added a little bit more texture. So I feel like these windows need to be a little darker. So I grabbed some indigo there, and I'm just going to darken these up so they're not just violet. I feel like they just need a little bit more blue in there, just to kind of darken them. And not the whole thing. I don't need to cover the whole thing. I don't need a solid. I'm going to come back in here and darken this edge as well, and then kind of pull down into this doorway that looks into the other part of the barn. Maybe add a little contrast to that angled, support post or whatever, just to help it pop out a little bit more. And then I'm going to come back in. Let's see here. I'm going to come back in. Yeah, I'm just going to darken this up just a wee bit more. That's just indigo again that I'm using here. And just going to kind of help that. Basically, I'm thickening up that and then adding just a little bit more to these slats. Doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have to, but just kind of helping differentiate those from the background. Maybe I'll add a little bit more. Excuse me, a little bit more to the roof line here, just in a few spots. Nothing, nothing too drastic. Let me kind of come back over here. And then I even though I lifted some out, I can come back in and paint around some of those areas that I lifted, and add even more darks to help pop that barn. I'm still not feeling that barn is separated enough. It's not. There's not enough contrast between the barn roof and the trees. So I want to just make sure that I really I'm pumping up that contrast by adding this, and that's indigo. I'm a big fan of the indigo blue. It's a nice dark blue. I also like royal blue. It's nice and dark, but it can be, both of them can be thinned down to a really light wash, but at the same time you can get a really rich, strong, deep dark as well. And it's better than black. I mean, this may look black on screen, but it's it's a really dark blue. So, and I'm just just kind of helping push those trees back and pull that barn forward. It's kind of coming in.
up here a little bit. Get a little bit more of that. Let's get the camera up there. Sorry. Um, just want to add a little bit more dark back in here, just to, again, adding that contrast to um, really help um, add detail to this. The more darks and contrast you start adding, the more detail you get into this. Now, I don't want to go overblown and get this so detailed that it's um, too much. I'm still kind of going after that impressionistic feeling, uh, but I do want that contrast in there. Uh, uh, I want that variation in color, and I want that variation in contrast. I want lights and darks and mid-tones, and that's what helps it pop, helps it really bring that barn forward. So just kind of continuing on with this. This I'm adding a little. This is quinacridone violet that I'm adding in there just to get that keep that kind of complementary color going. So it helps make those trees look much more vibrant than just a flat green. Uh, Here's a little, believe it or not, that's a little opera that I've just dropped in there on top. And it just adds a little, what I've said before. It just, the having that complementary color against the green makes that green seem that much better. All right, let's see here. I want to kind of come in here and maybe add in some barbed wire, or fence wire. It doesn't necessarily have to be barbed. Maybe it kind of ends right here. There's a little squiggle of wire. And we'll just do a couple of strands of wire coming in here to the fence post, just to kind of make it have a purpose other than just being a device to get your eye to move up into the sky from the road. You follow in down here at the bottom right hand corner, follow that road back, you hit that post, it shoots you up along with that tree right there, you get into the sky, and then you'll come back around, and then keep kind of circling around the painting. Of course, I haven't painted the sky yet, but so we'll see if I can continue that kind of circle. Yeah. But I wanted that fence post to have a little bit of a reason for being there. So here we go. So I've flipped the board over, and that's why it looks like it's upside down, because it is. And I'm going to work on the sky now. I've kind of gotten far enough along here where I know the feeling. And so for skies, I like to paint wet on wet. So I've got my 1-inch flat brush here. If you're doing a bigger painting, use a bigger brush. I've got a 2-inch flat that I use if I'm doing a really large painting, but this isn't really big. It's only, I don't even remember. What size is it? 10 by 14. Couldn't think of the size. But it's only 10 by 14, so it's not really huge. When I'm teaching classes, I do a lot of stuff in 9 by 12 as well, just because it's quick and easy. So most of the time I'm using this 1-inch brush. But if you're doing something bigger, get a bigger brush. I got that 2-inch flat as well, which I really like. And that one's a Robert Simmons Skyflow wash, but which I really like their brushes as well. But yeah, just kind of following along. I'm painting around
the objects I'm dropping in. You can see there's a fair amount of water here. I really want that paper to be saturated. So I'm adding a lot of water. Um, Getting that nice and wet because I want a lot of work time on this as well. Okay, so now I've picked up some, I've gotten a pretty heavy wash of peacock blue. So I still have a lot of water in that wash of, that puddle of peacock blue, but it's just peacock blue. And I'm just kind of painting around. You can see that even though I'm using my flat brush, I'm just using the corner of the brush to kind of paint around those trees so that I don't get a, um, I don't want to paint over the trees. I just want to kind of paint around the trees. So just kind of continuing around. I can choose to get in there more later, but right now I'm just kind of, I can also sculpt how I want the top of this tree to look. So I can leave white in there as even more of a highlight from the sun. I can get right up next to the paint. I can paint over the color a little bit if I want to give a little atmospheric perspective to it. In this case, I'm just kind of going around it. I'm adding some, I'm just using this peacock blue. If you don't have peacock blue, you could use, ultramarine. That's a nice one. Cobalt blue is really nice. I just happen to like peacock blue. All my students tease me because I use it a lot when starting skies. It was my mom's favorite, one of her favorite watercolor colors, and one of mine as well. And I lost my mom back in January of 2018, the 4th day of January. And as I'm filming this, it's the 5th day of January 2026, so, or 15th day of January 2026. So now that I've got that on there, before it dries, I want to get some toilet paper, and this is my patented toilet. It's not really patented. This is my toilet paper cloud method. So you can see, I want to make sure that I have a cloud shape. Not like I don't want to do that. I don't want to make a little tiny dot and then just a bunch of disconnected little dots of pickup. But you can see I've got this kind of elongated cloud shape with my toilet paper, and I'm just blotting some of that excess water up. You can see it's not going to go always well. Mine dried a little bit because I was talking too much and whatnot, but you can see it's really picked up some of that, and I've got some nice whites back in the paper. And also I'm rotating the toilet paper around, so I'm trying to find a clean area of toilet paper. I'm going to re-soften this. Let me see if I can get some of that. Unfortunately, I let it dry a little bit too long. You want to do this while it's still pretty wet. So I'm just going to kind of blot that a little bit more. I don't know how well that did, but now I can come back in with my peacock blue, and even though that paper's damp, you'll see where I blotted that, it's not going to go, the paint's not going to run back into it. Like if I had just left it and put this paint down, it would have run all over. But so I can get some crisp edges. Now I don't want to completely outline these clouds. I want some lost and found edges, just like real clouds. You'll see edges, but then you'll see edges, that are completely lost, that kind of blur into a different, color. So I'm just kind of coming around. I'm looking at edges that I like, that I find interesting. I'm going to pull some of this color back around. I'm going to skip some areas where I think, oh, well, that's kind of neat the way that's softened, soft going up into the darker sky, kind of like the cloud is wispy. So let me pick up some of this excess water. I don't mind blossoms in my sky. I feel like that makes it more interesting, but sometimes you don't want them right up next to the edge of your paper. So I'm just going to pick up some of that excess water, and again, doing that with a thirsty brush. Now I've picked up some more
peacock blue here, and I'm just kind of going around again using the point or the corner of my brush to put some paint down. Sometimes I'll put it down with the entire edge and then let it kind of seep around here. You know, I want to cover a large space, so I was using the whole thing and doing larger strokes. Here I'm just using the corner. And if this makes you uncomfortable, if you're not quite comfortable doing that, you can switch to a much smaller brush. You know, you switch to a round with a point. But try practicing it with the point of your 1 inch flat. If you don't have a 1 inch flat, try a 3/4 inch or a 1/2 inch flat and see how that does. So I'm just going to kind of come around here. And here in a little bit, I'll probably switch up to a round brush anyway, just to get a little more detail. But right now, I'm kind of happy with the flat. So I'm just it allows me to get a lot of color on there really fast, and get a lot of coverage really quickly. So I'm just going to come in here with a thirsty brush again. Again, brush is wet. I squeeze out as much moisture as I can so it's still damp, and it picks that right up. See? I'll just come over here and pick that excess up there. I still got very little moisture in the brush, so I can just come along here. And you can see it picks it right up. So I just don't have too much. Alright, so I'm going to flip this back around here, and you'll see me do just what I told you not to do. I'm going to grab some clean toilet paper. Now in this case, I just want to use I want to just kind of clean up one small little area. So you can, once you've kind of gotten cloud shapes that are kind of interconnected and working well together, you can go back in with just a little area. And get that to just where you want it. There you can see me. I was just kind of finding a clean area, and here I'm just kind of picking up some up in that darker area. I want a little differentiation between some of the darker parts of the sky and those clouds. But I it makes it look like it's a little wispy. I just grabbed a little peacock blue, and I wanted to show you this real quick. I grabbed a little peacock blue with a tiny bit of indigo mixed in. And it looks like I put a whole lot of color down there, and I did, but I'm going to come back in. I've cleaned my brush out now, and I'm just going to soften that. I can use my brush rolled. I can kind of make strokes that kind of look kind of more horizontal and like the bottom of a cloud. I'm going to bring this up close and kind of clean up that edge right there. So you can see, even though I added a lot of color, it was really dark. Once I added water to it, it lightened right back up, and I thinned it down to be a really watery, light wash. And all I'm doing is kind of thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe there's this, these early summer, late spring kind of, cloudburst or something back there in the background over the mountains. So just gonna add just a little bit more dark. Well, I'm gonna add this here, but I want to make sure that you can see what I'm gonna work on next. So I'm just gonna come over here and add a little bit of, a bottom to a cloud. Basically, it's just the bottom. Sorry about that noise if you can hear that. Some weird little car went blasting by with a terrible exhaust.
yeah, just basically adding some dimension to these clouds so they don't just look flat. And this is just that same kind of peacock blue mixed with a tiny little bit of indigo. So it's just a slightly darker, bright blue. um, you could use royal blue. This is a good, kind of royal blue here. Maybe there's a little bit of rain clouds or something. I might have a little bit too much. Yeah, here we go. We'll just kind of dry brush some, kind of use the side of my brush to kind of push some of that down and give it a kind of a sheet of rain, maybe just a hair. I don't think I'm going to do it in this, but you could go all in on a storm, but I feel like I've got enough kind of going on in the rest of the painting. I don't really need to add, a huge storm cloud. I just want to kind of give that impression that maybe there's some rain off in the horizon. Going to turn this field from kind of a gold color to green once the grass gets some water and sprouts back up. Just kind of just hinting at that. Over the horizon kind of thing. Just doing a little soft kind of mostly water right there. Well, it is all water. Just kind of softening things up. Now I've picked up a little more of that dark blue. We'll just add a little here. I've kind of got the beginning of a little cloud down there. I'm not sure if I like that or not. It might be a little too much. So we'll see where we go with that. But just kind of thinking about the shape of these clouds, how, I want some sharp edges, I want some soft edges, I want some darks, some lights, all that to add volume and shape to these, so they're just not flat. Over the years, I've gotten much better at doing this, and really this is just about practicing, and kind of one of the things that I tell myself a lot when I'm painting, even if I'm working on a commission or I've got a deadline, I always kind of remind myself that, hey, I'm just practicing here. I'm just playing around, having a good time. That way there's no pressure. Here I added a little quinacridone, opera right in there to add a little violet to the clouds. Just to give it a little variation. So, I'm just going to kind of move that around a little bit here. Now I think I'm going to add a little bit more over here. So now, because even though it's opera, I'm adding it on top of this blue that's still wet, so it's going to be a little more violet. But it's a nice, kind of pinkish violet that looks really nice in a sky. So just adding a little bit of that, it gives you a little variation in color in the sky, makes it a little more interesting than just being blue. And now I'm going to add some highlights, and you might panic and you're like, what the heck are you doing? I've got a little permanent yellow deep here, and this is going to be like a little bit of where the sun's maybe catching the tops of these clouds, and you can see I put some paint down, and then I clean my brush out and I kind of pick it back up, just to I put it down kind of in the area that I want it, and then I go in and I soften it and I pick it back up. So maybe I got a little too much there, a little carried away, but that's all right. And even if it, you know, most of that area is dry, so I'm not going to get a huge amount of green. But even if there's a little hint of green in there, that's okay. Now I'm using a little opera just to add a little pink into some of those lighter areas. It's a little hard to see with the glare here, but when this dries, you'll be able to see it better. I'm going to just kind of spread that around a little bit. So I got that little wisp of pink and kind of golden yellow. I'll just pick some of this up with a Kleenex, or toilet paper is really what that is. Now I'm going to come back in here and add a little hint of that yellow up in here. Catch the top of that cloud. So, and if I get a little too much, I can always pick it back up. But now I've got a little hint of light up in there. Let's see. I'll do a little opera down in here, and maybe pull it on up in here a little bit more. It's a little hard to tell on camera, but that did a lot for that cloud. It just added a little more interest. Pull in some opera here as well. And even though you're getting a bit of a glare from the lights, and I apologize for that, but once it's dry, you'll be able to see how that's really gonna pop. Here I'm just adding, a little bit more down in there, maybe putting some down, picking it back up, thinking about where I want some water. Maybe I've got a little too much, so we'll just pick that up. I'm gonna hit it with a hairdryer here real quick. I'm not gonna totally dry it, just kind of drying it a little bit. You can still see there's a fair amount of water, but now I can come back in with some clean opera and really really make that pop some more. And again, it's wet, so there's a bit of a glare. So let's come back over here. I'm going to add a little bit of this opera over in here. It's not totally dry in some spots, but it's dry enough in some other spots where I can get a nice kind of blend. I'm going to now add a little, that's the permanent yellow deep. That I've added, and now I'm just going to pick some of that back up. I got a little bit too much on there, but now, even though I put all that down and then picked some back up, I've just got the right amount. It's the perfect amount to just give that hint of that color there, that variation that I want to see. I don't like this little cloud down here. And instead of trying to soften that, I'm just going to actually use that to my advantage. I'm going to come in here with a little indigo. No, not indigo, sorry. Peacock blue. And just add a little bit more dark down in there. But it's, it's a brighter dark. So, and then I'm just going to clean up this edge. I don't want it to stop right at the edge. I want it to continue past the barn. So I want to make sure that it looks like it's actually, continuing past. It's not just at the top or only outlining the barn. I want that. I don't want a sharp outline. I want kind of an edge that then creeps up and blends it back out. See if I can soften this up a little. See what I can do there. I don't know. I don't know if I like that any better, but that's all right. Sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. Let me just kind of, not happy with that edge right there. I'm going to just clean that up a little bit. Pull this across. Again, this is just peacock blue. I might have a little hint of indigo in there, but I doubt it. So, all right. Let's keep working on the up on the sky up here. I don't have to worry about putting too much detail in this, and I'll show you why once we get a little closer to being done here, which we're pretty close. We're getting there. We're getting pretty close to being done with this. Yeah, let me just kind of come in and scrub that and see if I can't pick some of that back up. It may or may not work. It's just, like I said, it's always an experiment. It's always playing around with color, trying to see what you can and can't do. I will say this, because I'm using a really good quality paper, that paper can stand up to abuse. And at times I have abused the paper in a painting. But it can stand up to that, a lot of repeated, getting wet, scrubbing it. I mean, eventually it will start to break down, and the fibers in the paper will break down. But currently, I'm still in a good state. So just kind of going around and seeing what I like, what I don't like. Here I'm just adding a little water. I'm gonna kind of soften this, see if I can, or attempt to soften it a little bit more. Just a little, like I said, it's an experiment. It's playing around, seeing what you can get done. If I can't get it to lighten the way I want it to, I can always go the other direction and darken it a little bit and soften the edge that way by adding more paint, which is what I'm doing here. I'm not super crazy about the shape, so I'm gonna come in and add a little bit more paint and change that shape up a little bit. So, and I'm just using my number 8 round, and here we're gonna add a little royal blue up in here. Or no, I don't know why I said royal blue. It's peacock again. I'm losing my mind. So just kind of moving it around, softening some edges. It's a little hard to see because it's wet, but here we'll dry it real quick. I'm speeding this up. All right, so now I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to come in and do a little lifting here with some ruts on my road. So I want to really start to define this road a little bit better. It looks like a road for the most part, but I kind of want to define it a little bit better. So first I'm going to lift out some ruts with my brush. Just it works the same way that when I spritzed some water on there. So here I'm just going to kind of, well, of course, once again my hand is not transparent, so you can't really see what I'm doing. I'm sorry about that, but here I'm painting in some strokes, and this is a little quinacridone violet mixed with royal blue. We'll just kind of lift some of that back out. Even using paint, I can lift it back out if I'm not super happy with it. And then what I'll do is come back in. So once I've lifted that out, I can come back in with a little paint here in a second. And here we go. We'll just kind of, and I can add like a little shadow edge to it just to make it, see how I made that a little darker here. We'll come back down here. I'm going to add a little shadow edge to that. Where it's a little darker down in that rut. We'll add a little dark over here on this side of the rut just to help that look like it's really down in there. We had some good rain or something at some point, and somebody drove through and caused some ruts. Once again, I'm sorry about that banging in the background. That's that stained glass artist working. And we're all here in a big giant room. We have individual studio spaces, but it's all open air. Well, I mean inside a giant building. Uh, Actually, it's a pretty cool building. It's a converted lumberyard and hardware store that was built in the early 1900s. It's been in the same family since 1907. Here I'm just I've got some quinacridone violet now, um, adding in some darker ruts, and here I'm just gonna use water uh, to continue that rut inside the shadow. So just adding, kind of working on the shape of that, and then yeah, here we'll blot it up, and then I can kind of yeah, kind of scrub it a little bit. A couple little wipes there. We'll come back in and see what. Yeah, so I've kind of added that dark. I was using paint, but you can, I had paint on my brush. I just didn't feel like cleaning it, but you can see I just painted that down. It was wet. It's going to do the same thing as if I had no paint in my brush. Yeah, here we'll kind of zoom in so you can see that a little bit better. There we go. Uh, so just coming back in with a little dark here on either side. I might have made that a little bit too thick, so I just want to adjust the size of that light area. So just adding, here I've got a little indigo uh, mixed with hooker's green just on top there. And then back in with a little quinacridone violet mixed with royal blue. Maybe I want a couple of ruts that are kind of running slightly different. So I got that one up there that I kind of came in at a different angle. These are all kind of running at the same angle here, but I might well, I'm gonna finish these up here first, and then so I'm gonna lift a little bit out of here, out of this part of the shadow, and then come back in here again. And currently I'm using my number 6 round, just because I want a really good point, and it has a really good point on it. Um, so it's that low Cornell number 6 round. It's their ultra round, 70/20 ultra round. It's a really great brush. I'm not paid by them. I don't get any money from them. I do like their products, but they make really good brushes. So now I've got a little burnt sienna here that I'm using, and then a little alizarin crimson next to it with it. Just, I want some variation in that. Not just all blues and purples and stuff. I want some earthy tones in there as well. Since it is a a dirt road. So here I've got some hooker's green and royal blue to come in and kind of change that shadow up, or that lifted area. I want to make it a little thinner. Kind of change the thickness a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, though. I mean, none of this is, it's all whatever it turns out to be. So yeah, just kind of continuing with that burnt sienna, alizarin crimson mix there. Maybe I'll come in, kind of use the side of my brush to kind of dry brush some kind of more, get that kind of more speckled look. Even using, dry brushing with just, kind of pushing the tip down, but not You know, there's not a lot of paint in my brush, um, not a lot of water in my brush, so I'm just kind of getting that dry brush, using the texture of the paper to add texture to my road. Then I kind of want to differentiate the edge of my road from you know, that grassy area behind it there or above it. So I'm just going to kind of add a hint of a dark. Maybe there's a little bit of a you know, ditch on the side of the road. Not really a ditch, but you know, a little indentation where the road is kind of runs down into, for drainage. So just adding a little hint of that over there as well. So we'll do one more of these ruts coming off here. I don't know how much I'll like this or not. I mean, it's kind of coming off into the corner. I don't know. It's fine for now, but we'll see. Um, so let's see. I'm gonna bring a little water up here. And again, I'm sorry, my hand is not transparent. Well, I'll have to see what I can do to work on that. But just kind of lifting out a few more ruts up here in the distance, where the road starts to curve around behind that post. There we go, getting a little more. You can see almost instantly how that lifts out. Let me see if I can get one up in here. There we go. Yep, got a little bit of a rut kind of in there. Let's see how I like this. I'm gonna come down here with a little dark, you know, maybe there's a little bit of a ditch on this side of the road as well, you know, a little indentation that's going to catch rain and run it off the side instead of across the road. I just want to kind of hint at that being the edge of the road as well. So there's a little bit of a shadowy area down in there. And you can see it's really quite simple. It's just a little stroke of where I, you know, push down a little harder with the brush and got a little thicker of a stroke. Just adding, and that was burnt sienna that I used there. I'll come in with a little more. You know, just some random strokes here. Well, not random. I'm kind of working on all these ruts here. Maybe we'll just kind of bring a dark one in through here. I don't know how I like that. This one can kind of cut across there. We'll see. I don't know. I think I'm going to pick that back up. Yeah. Just kind of give a hint of one going across like that. Maybe somebody skid it out a little bit. Who knows? You know, we're just telling a story here. That's really what painting is telling a story, a visual story. You know, what happened to make this road rutted the way it is. You know, we get. And you know, the color's less important. You know, I think, you know, I was just using that quinacridone violet mixed with royal blue. That's what I've got here, doing this little edge here and kind of coming along with that. That's a little dark, so I'm just going to come back in with a clean brush and kind of soften that. Yeah, I'm just going to
put a little water on that and soften that back up. It's a little darker than I wanted it. There we go. Get some more water in there. Add a little dark to the edge of this one. That's quinacridone violet mixed with the royal blue just to get a little deeper violet. Just kind of coming across this edge here. A little dark. Hooker's green mixed with royal blue. And then now I've got peacock blue. Just to kind of add in a little more dark on top of this. Get that shadow really get that good contrast. Yeah, I'm still not happy with that over there. We'll come back to it. Since this is wet, I'm going to come over here and kind of work on this a little bit. Kind of clean up this stuff just a touch. Here I'm going to come across with a little Hooker's green and royal blue wash. We'll pick up a little, kind of get, a little sideways rut going in there. Maybe there's another one coming in this way. There we go. That's now. I kind of smeared the paint a little bit, and that's okay. I kind of like that. Let's get that a little deeper, dark over here. Get that. First, I had some Hooker's green and royal blue, or yeah, Hooker, darkened Hooker's green, and then I added a little peacock blue in there as well. Come up in here and do the same thing. Just ever so slightly add a little peacock blue, which is going to kind of read like green because it's on top of that orangey yellow. So just kind of, there we go. Kind of really showcasing the edge of that road. We're getting really close, folks. I'm feeling good about this. I'm going to do a little, add a few darks here and there. Maybe lift some back out. Yeah, just adding texture. I don't know why, I don't know. I probably shouldn't, but I just kind of like that little thing there. Alright, so I'm going to come back in with just a little bit more dark here. Just kind of really anchor this stuff down in there. Just because I in a little bit I'm going to do something that's going to kind of knock some of this back down so it's not quite as dark as it looked. Well, the whole thing's going to be a similar darkness, but I do want some of this to show through, so I'm going to get it fairly dark right now. But it'll simplify this whole thing and it'll knock that back down. So right now it looks like I'm putting a lot of detail into the corner, but most of this will kind of go away. Well, not really go away, but it'll be knocked back, so it'll be less prevalent. So just adding, and really this is just all about texture down in here. I mean, it is the closest area to the viewer, to us, so it stands to reason that we might see some of that. So really that's just, what I'm doing here, and I'm using indigo with some Hooker's green, and then I had some quinacridone violet mixed with some royal blue there, and even used a little burnt sienna with some indigo mixed in with it.
And by mixed in, I mean it's really just I grab a little, I have some burnt sienna, and then I grab just a tiny little bit of indigo, plop it down in there, and then pick both up, and it kind of mixes on the brush almost. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna kind of, now that that's kind of dry over here, I'm gonna come back in and add a few little shadowy areas to these kind of sideways ruts. Maybe somebody just pulling out of a barn or something and came a slightly different direction around that curve. Who knows? That's up to the viewer to kind of make up that story in their mind. And that's what's fun about this is like you kind of tell a story. You have a story that you're telling that maybe is in your mind, but then the viewer, the person who's enjoying the piece, looking at it, is entertained by that story, but they also get to make up their own story about what's happening there. And that's painting in general. I mean, any kind of painting, I feel like that's what we're doing is we're telling stories. Here I'm just gonna spritz a little bit more, lift up, lift up a few little speckles in here, just to kind of break that up, make it a little more dappled. So now that that's allowed to kind of soften the paint up, I'll just come back in with that, blot it and then scrub it. You can see, I got a little more dappling in those shadows, which I like. Maybe try it a little more over in this section as well, just to add a little more texture. I think we're getting there. We're getting pretty close though on this. So let me just blot that real quick and scrub it once again. And even if you get, a little bit of, periodically this happens, kind of like it did over here on the lower right-hand side of the road, where I did those kind of things sideways. You might get a little smear, but that's okay. It kind of works out. So here's one of the finishing touches we're going to do. And I like to do this. So this is a fine mist sprayer filled with cobalt blue. And it's a fine mist sprayer, so that means it's just like a normal sprayer. And I'm shaking it up right now. It's a little hard to see. It's not on camera, but I want to really make sure that I get this spray bottle working well. Because I'm going to go around and add a kind of mist of blue around the edges. So you can see I'm hanging out over the middle of my painting, and I'm spraying away from the center out towards the edge. And I'm basically kind of aiming for the edge. I'm just kind of adding a bit of a vignette kind of thing. And this sort of comes from the advent of photography, early photography, where they had that kind of blurring of the outside. But it also mimics the way the human eye works. Like, if we're focused on something, the outskirts of our vision are blurry. So this kind of helps mimic that, and really helps push your eye into the area of interest that I really want you to look at. So it helps just push that in. So I'm just going to wipe up a little bit around here, kind of clean up so I don't have too much of that. But you can see, I mean, I overlap the edge quite a bit. So that's why my board back there, this board that I'm painting on used to be pure white. It's just gator board that I got from an art supply place, probably Cheap Joe's back in the day when they were still around. But hey, Journey Art Stuff has taken up the mantle for them, so not paid by them either. But anyway, yeah. So I'm just going to add a little bit more of this, and what it does is it knocks back the lights. And blurs the edges a little bit more, and just really helps you focus. And again, once you're done with that, you really want to
um, kind of wipe up. When you're done with that water bottle, you're going to want to take the top off. Take the nozzle off, stick it down in your water bucket, and spray some clean water through it until you don't have blue paint coming through it anymore. So here you can see, and I'm holding it at a kind of a 45-degree angle. It's a little hard looking straight down, but here you can kind of see I have it at a 45-degree angle. I'm making sure that let's see, I twisted a little bit, but the straw comes down, and then I want that spray nozzle to line up with the same area where the straw is, so that I'm always in water, so I never get a dry pump, if you will. And I'm spraying around the edge, leaving the very center still bright and vibrant. So that's kind of it. You get this really cool kind of vignette look to everything. So I'm gonna, yeah, it's still a little wet. I'm gonna go ahead and hit it with the hair dryer here, and get that dry. There's just a little bit more we want to do on this. Not too much longer. I think we're getting pretty close to done with this. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, it looks done to me. And for the most part, it is. But there's always that like little tiny bit at the end that just kind of pushes your painting over the top. Just really kind of helps it, sets it apart from the others. And it is hard to kind of figure. It's really easy to overwork something and get all fiddly with things. I do that all the time, and I'm like, oh, why did I do that? But so knowing where to stop is important, but also sometimes you just, there's just a little bit more. I'm going to put a little highlight of maybe there's some light coming through something that catches this tall grass right here. And then we'll paint a little bit of a dark shadow along the edge, or darker shadow. And then I'm going to come back in here and make sure the wire is still easy to see. Some of that got covered up by that spritz of that blue, and I don't want it. I still want it visible, but it being in the dark like that, it's so much. It's less noticeable, but it still kind of pulls you in. Here I'm working on a little bit of a shadow where I think maybe the top of that post would be visible. So that's what that is. Where that post is sticking up past the tree. There's a little bit of a shadow cast from that. And is that the exact spot it would be? I don't know. Here I'm going to come over here and added a little bit more dark right there. And here's where it gets really fun. So I'm going to go back in, and I'm just going to spritz some areas. Even though I've added that spray, that vignette, I can come back in and kind of lift some back out in some spots. So I'm just kind of spritzing around. And, it looks like I'm just sort of hovering over there and not doing anything. That's because those spray bottles take very little pressure to get any liquid to come out through the spray nozzle. So it's really cool. And now that that's sat for a few seconds, I can blot it, get it really dry, and then lift that. And now you see I've got a whole lot of texture coming back into there. It's still muted from what it was, but it adds just a little bit more texture in there. I don't want a huge amount next to the edge of the paper, but I do want some. I don't want just a big blur right there, but I don't want to get too carried away. But which it is possible to get too carried away, but but it's just kind of fun to try. And the cool thing is I can always go back in if I feel like this is too much. I can go back in and I can spritz it again with the blue on top of that texture. I don't think I'm going to. I'm kind of liking what's going on there. I'm enjoying that. But I could always add more, just spritz a little bit more blue on top to even knock it back if I get it a little too much. Here I'm going to just come in with some uh, burnt sienna, and I'm just going to kind of come in and add a few trunks and branches in these trees just to give them a little, uh, anchor into just help them sort of have a reason for all uh, those leaves to be up there. So these are just some trees. Maybe it's a cottonwood. Who knows what it is back in there? Uh, so just adding a little bit of that. So let's see. I'm just going to kind of zoom in here so you can see this a little bit better. It doesn't take a lot to suggest, that you've got some trees, but you can see I'm just kind of thinking about where the trunks and branches would be poking out uh, from behind leaves and stuff. Because even a pretty full tree, you're gonna kind of see branches peeking out here and there, uh, that kind of thing. So just kind of thinking about that, where different bits of a tree trunk or a branch or whatever will show through. Maybe I got another one coming up over here, and this is just some burnt sienna, uh, and my number 6 round, because it's got a really nice fine point on it. Well, that one's kind of coming in at that angle. I can also come back down in here, and just paint a little water. So I'm going to do that down in here. I'm putting just clean water down, and then I'm going to blot that and then scrub it. And you can see I've lifted out some areas that kind of, I can make that trunk a little, let me just hit that again here. I can make that trunk look like it's coming down into the ground, and then I can come back over here and kind of change the width and the shape up and just add a little bit of a shadow there. So it was a little too thick, and then I just kind of came in and added a little bit to it. But now it looks like that comes all the way down into that darker shrubby area, and you can see it back in there. So same with this one. I'm just going to make that one kind of come down, maybe at a little bit of a curve to it. Not much of one, but a little bit. And then same with this one. I'm just going to clean that up and make that trunk look like it's coming all the way down to the ground behind all that brushy stuff. And then maybe this tree kind of sprouts off and comes off over into this area. So you can have a lot of fun with this. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'll just maybe there's a little bit of a branch down in here. And this looks darker. It's going to be kind of dark, but it's not as dark as it kind of looks, because it's still wet. All right, let me kind of zoom out here a little bit. Let's see here. I'm going to add some branches down in, into this kind of small shrub, tree, whatever you want to call it, next to the barn, just to kind of make it look, kind of fill it out, make it look a little more like, like it's kind of wild, shrubby, kind of bushy tree thing. So let's see here. Now I'm going to just come up in here, add a few little branches and twigs and things up in here, kind of make this look like it's got something going on. You can kind of get as busy and as detailed as you want, but I'm over here on the edge of the paper. I don't think I want a huge amount. I'm just going to kind of hint at some things. Let's see, I'm going to kind of, just occurred to me, I want this tree to sort of stand out a little bit more. I want that contrast with the sky to be a little bit more. So I'm going to add just a bit more peacock blue around here. You know, it's not a huge, you know, it's not a dark, huge, a very dark color, but it's you know, it's a brighter blue, but I want this kind of contrast against that tree. I really want that tree to pop. So just kind of looking at it, I'm making sure that and I really feel like maybe it needed just a bit more contrast with the sky, just to really help push that tree forward and push everything in front of it forward from the sky. So I'm just kind of going around. I'm not really outlining it. I am creating an edge, but I'm not outlining it. So just kind of you know, adding some dark, and you can see it's a thicker, you know, thicker outline. It's or thicker edge. You know, it's not just a line. I'm adding some substance to that, so there's a fair amount of width to that dark. So I just want this tree to kind of pop forward and really contrast with that sky. I really like that little pop of yellow right there, yellow and orange, you know, and bright green. And I'm not super crazy about that straight line. Let me add a few little. I'm going to add a few little spots where the tree kind of, you know, has some sky showing through it. Maybe a few over here. Basically, I'm just kind of filling in a few of the little white specks that I've left. Also, the edge of that tree, kind of on the right-hand side of that tree, looked a little like a straight line, so I kind of indented some of that a little bit. Maybe I'll come up here and add a few little spots where you can see the sky through the trees. Let me just hit this with a hairdryer here real quick, kind of lock some stuff in. You can see that really helped those small clump of trees really pop forward. So I'm just gonna kind of soften this edge just a wee bit more. Just coming in, kind of scrubbing with my brush. It is a little hard on your brush, but you know, with these these synthetic brushes, whether they're low Cornell or whatever brand you like, they're tough. You know, it's a tougher brush than say a Kolinsky Sable, which is a wonderful brush to paint with. Don't get me wrong. I have a few, but I stopped painting with them because they're so expensive, and I don't know. I get good quality from these synthetics, and they don't wear out as fast. They're less expensive and they last longer. So I think I'm gonna maybe add a couple little birds here, maybe 3. Yeah, so we'll just kind of come in, just kind of hint at that little bird right there, kind of flying around. Let's kind of zoom in on this so you can see it a little better. We'll put one, maybe there'll be one right here as well. So, and he's kind of flying at a slightly different angle from the first one. You don't want them all kind of at the same angle. You want them kind of all doing their independent thing, because that's what birds are doing. And you can see I'm just really hinting at them. It's just kind of a little swoosh, and just kind of, you know, creates a little bird flying in the sky. So maybe I'll add just a few little more. And that was indigo that I used to make those birds. I'm going to add a little bit more over here just to darken up a few of these little gaps in the roof, make them look a little bit deeper, and like maybe there might be a leak in that roof. I don't know. You know, the roof, you know, the barn's old. It's been there for a while. Maybe it needs a little repair, but that's what makes it more interesting. So just kind of some final touches to this before we finish up. Not a lot left. Just kind of hint a little hint here and there of a darker edge or stroke or whatever, and we should be should be about done. I'm going to take kind of a little bit of a look here, see what I think. I kind of straighten it up here for you. Um, really, yeah. I think we're this is looking pretty good. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap it up for today. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions, comments, stuff like that, leave me a comment down below. Please like, share, subscribe. Those subscriptions, click that little bell so you can get notified. That really helps me out, helps build the channel, and can keep me kind of doing these things. I wanna kind of keep sharing my knowledge and helping other people grow as an artist. And I hope that you guys will follow along with this journey with me. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of this. Um, I enjoy painting, and I come from, like I said, I'm the third generation artist in my family. Um, and I have a niece who's carrying on that tradition. She's in the fourth generation of artists, which is really awesome. But my grandmother loved. She didn't care if you were great at painting or not, just as long as you were having fun. And that's kind of the attitude that I have as well. But I would, she wanted you to improve, and she wanted you to take it seriously if you wanted to. But if it was just a hobby, hey, that's great too. Have fun with it. That's the most important thing, is just having a good time painting. And I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, subscribe. Give me a thumbs up in the comments, that or and leave a comment. Both of those really help out as well. And I will see you in the next video. And I'm going to leave you with this little thread of knowledge. Life's too short to paint on cheap paper. Alrighty. Well, everybody have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you next time.